First of all, it was great news indeed to be informing that Outlaws have a new album coming almost in a month's time. 8 years after your last release so far, which called It's About Pride. Dixie Highway is the 11th studio album of the band since your eponymous one back in 1975, right?
That's right.
Now, what I want to ask you is, what is the meaning of the title, and what should we expect in this new release?
No, Dixie Highway is somewhat of a metaphor for our kind of career, just a long-term journey that we have been on for the last 50-plus years. And if you listen, I don't know if you've been able to listen to the record, but the lyrics sort of spell it out in a way that the road, that the lifestyle, that our chosen path is difficult but rewarding, and we internalize a very sincere sense of commitment to it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so, I just think that you can't do what we do and do it part-time. It's a full-time job, and it really, it takes an entire lifetime to do what it is you set out to do. It really does. It takes a long time to...
Yeah, indeed, a long time indeed. Besides the metaphor, the Dixie Highway is an actual highway back in the days, right?
Yeah, it's an old north-south route.
Mm-hmm. And some parts of this highway are still existing, right?
Well, there's a Highway 41, which is the Dixie Highway in certain parts, that runs through Tampa, where we grew up. And every time we left Tampa to go on the road, we would always go up that road to get to the other destinations in America. And so Highway 41, which is the Dixie Highway, was a very kind of important road that got us from where we were to where we wanted to be. And again, it's somewhat of a metaphor that we would travel that road to get where we were going.
I got it. Since we are speaking about meaning of titles and words and metaphors, what is the meaning behind the name of your band, Outlaws? Are you an outlaw in a way? What does this mean for you?
Well, we thought, my idea that pertaining to that was that it was sort of a Western connotation to the name. And so because of that Western connotation, we decided that we liked that name. And the job description, to a certain extent, is a little bit, how would you say, and so we thought, hell, it's as good a name as any, and we just kind of went with it.
Yeah, it's a great name, even especially for a Southern rock band. But I wanted to ask you that.
Yes, well, but it didn't necessarily mean that we were living outside the law, but we were living outside the normal lifestyle issues that go into making a person's life.
Exactly that. Okay, now the new single, I have listened to that, Southern Rock Will Never Die from the new LP, will be officially released on January 17th, in 4 days. In 4 days. It seems to me that it will be another Southern rock anthem. that refers to fellow Southern musicians that had passed away, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Would you like
and,
to... Please.
Go ahead.
No, I mean,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
if you would like to comment about the Southern rock scene legacy and the so many musicians who have died by accidents or health issues, especially about your old friend Hughie, who died in 2007 by heart attack. He was only 55 years old.
Yeah. Well, we've lost so many friends to so many different things, so many different lifestyle issues, and the song,
yes,
is kind of like a, I don't know, when you list all the people that have died and you're trying to convince the listener that it will never die.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
it's kind of like
it's like a curse. I mean,
in the face of I was going to say, in the face of so much loss, me as an individual and the people that I play with are committed to the idea of keeping the genre alive.
Mm-hmm. From late Duane Allman up to the last loss. I mean, there is a ladder of losses from Duane Allman and Bats to the tragic accident of the plane crash from Lynyrd Skynyrd to Hughie and a lot of people who died in accidents or in health issues very young.
Right. Well.
Okay. Life goes on and rock and roll stays on.
Well, and it's no secret that the music business is a breeding ground for self-abuse, drugs and alcohol, and I mean
yes.
David Crosby and Eric Clapton and all the stories of the Rolling Stones. It's Keith Richards.
But
so it has, a sort of a kind of a ominous tone to it. But at any rate, we're committed to the idea of just continuing to go forward.
That's why someone has to treat it. Now let's go back to the time. Yeah, let's go back in time.
I'm with you.
You joined the band back in 1972, same year with your current drum Montejojo, as well with Frank O'Keefe, who died in 1995. Talk to us about the first years of Outlaws. From the very first days of your incarnation, you had a lineup including 3 guitar players, and fans used to refer to you as the Florida Guitar Army. Why it's common for the Southern rock bands to use 3 guitars?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. It was just kind of out of circumstantial fate, so to speak. It was just kind of how it worked out. That we would have 3 guitar players. And I don't know, it just evolved into what it became just by kind of luck, you know what I mean? It wasn't something that we planned out. So,
okay,
the Allman Brothers had 2 guitar players. Lynyrd Skynyrd had 3 guitar players.
Molly Hatchet 3.
Molly Hatchet came later, much later.
Yes, much later, yes.
But we just had Huey and Billy loved to play together, and I was a rhythm guitar player that fronted the band, and it just kind of worked out how it worked out. But it served us well. We all had plenty to do, and we did it pretty good. So, I felt like, for us, I mean, there was also the vocal part. I mean, Billy and Huey and I were singing together, and that was a really important part of our sound too, was the vocal harmony. And, just by luck of the draw, we wound up with the band we had, and it all seemed to work out.
Yes, the harmony, especially in Outlaws, are a little bit different from other South rock bands, giving you a different touch, a different soul in the music, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
the Outlaws were. I was going to say the Outlaws had their own musical personality. They weren't all that much like the Allman Brothers or Leonard Skinner, or even Marshall Tucker or Charlie Daniels. We were more of a vocal band, harmonizing vocal band, and so it kind of set us apart. Just the difference, that the Outlaws had from the standpoint of how they sounded compared to the other groups.
Now, the band released 3 studio albums, the eponymous one, 1975, the 3 first, Lady in Waiting, 1976, and Harry Sundown, 1977. All of them cemented your reputation and described you as a cornerstone of the scene, with songs like There Goes Another Love Song, Song in the Breeze, Stick Around for Rock and Roll, Breaker Breaker, Holiday, and many more. I believe a special reference to your trademark song, if I may say that, Greengrass and High Tides is required. Can you say something about the song, comment a little bit? About the lyrics?
Well, yeah.
It's about, okay, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, the song, Greengrass and High Tides, was something that we arranged collectively as a band when we were playing in clubs, and the clubs that we worked, which the common routine was to play 4 and 5 sets a night.
How many?
So if Greengrass and High Tide, what's that?
What? How many? How many sets?
Like we would play 4 or 5 sets a night in a club. We would play like 4 or 5 45-minute sets. And Greengrass and High Tides kind of took a long time to play, and we just got to the point with that song where we'd try and make it last longer, so we'd have to play less. So we'd have to play less songs, and I don't know. It worked out pretty good. By the time we got to making that first record, the song was 10 or more minutes long, and it became one of the favorites with our audience and with the kids in the clubs. And when we made the record on it jumped out there on FM radio and became one of the favorites
and
on the album. And so we would close the show with it every night, and people grew to love that song.
And what about the lyrics? Is it true about?
Well, and the lyrics, yeah. Well, they're a rather majestic sort of story, but I know that it was written about not Keith Richards, but what's the name of that guy from the Rolling Stones that died? It was written about them and their early exit and just how they lived their lives and and if you remember the Rolling Stones' greatest hits, it was called High Tides and Green Grass. And we just took that title and turned it around backwards and called it Green Grass and High Tides. And so that was kind of where that lyric came from.
Is it true that Ronnie Van Zant, the lead singer of Lynyrd Skynyrd, told Clive Davis, founder and president of Arista Records, to sign you a contract during a show in 1974 when you were supporting Lynyrd Skynyrd, and that you were the first act of Arista Records.
Yeah, Ronnie was a fan of our band. We had played together probably 6 or 7 times, and he introduced us to his manager at that time, who was helpful in us getting a record deal. And then the night that Clive Davis came to see the band, Ronnie knew he was in the audience, and he told Clive that he was crazy if he didn't sign the group. So, Ronnie was a very big supporter of our group and a very good friend.
Mm-hmm. So, you left the Outlaws originally for the first time in 1977 on the peak of the career of the band. Why? What happened?
Well, I think, bands are very volatile relationships, is well documented. And I really liked where the band was headed. I liked the musical personality we had created. And I didn't really see a reason to change that or to, change directions or courses with the music. So Huey and Billy, they wanted to go a different way with it, and I just wasn't. I disagreed with them. I liked our first album. I liked Lady in Waiting. I liked Hurry Sundown, and so that difference between them and I forced me from the band.
I understand.
And it was very hurtful. It was very difficult, but also, I was a fighter, and I wound up forming the Henry Paul Band and
1 year later,
Grey Ghost, and getting back, into that.
1 year later, if I'm not mistaken, and you have released 4 studio albums with Henry Paul Band.
Yes.
Yes.
And that was a learning experience for me too, to be a sort of a leader, a sole leader of the band. My tenure early in the Outlaws, I was the band leader in that early configuration. And then with the Henry Paul Band, I was kind of the sole leader because the name of the band and everything was pointed at me. And it was a really good learning experience for me.
In your first album, Grey Ghost, you composed, if I'm not mistaken, 2 songs in the memory of Ronnie. Do you believe that do you believe that he's the most important icon of the scene? Or not?
Well, he was important, and when you die young, it I think it sets you up for immortality. But that being said, I know he was important to us because he was instrumental in helping us be discovered. And you can't you have to, there was a lot of value in what he represented to us. And the Allman Brothers were incredibly popular and high and mighty and well out of our league from the standpoint of their career profile. It was huge. And so the band Lynyrd Skynyrd, they were a lot more sort of on our level, and we wound up forming a real friendship with them. And I don't know, that was just kind of how it played out.
You returned to Outlaws in 1983 for only one record, Soldier of Fortune. in 1986.
Oh, yeah. 1986, right.
And remained in the band until 1989.
That's right. And then again, you know, Huey wanted to, then it was more of a financial decision. And I think Huey wanted to go it alone, go the whole thing kind of alone. And I was cool. You know, if that's what he wanted to do, that was cool. But I also, again, didn't waste any time in forming another career by going to Nashville and forming Black Hawk and
1991.
So it got to be kind of like a pattern.
You released with Black Hawk 8 studio albums, a country band, right? Are you
right.
You are still a member of the band of Black Hawk?
Yes, and that was born, you know, kind of from my country music, country rock roots, and then but Black Hawk was born out of more of a songwriter arrangement that just happened to get lucky and get a record deal. And little did we know, you know, that we would have a string of hits and sell, you know, millions of records.
Crazy. It just was crazy. And so Black Hawk, gosh, I think when I signed with Arista for the second time with Black Hawk, I was 43 years old. You know, pretty far past the normal signing date for, you know, young new talent. I was a middle-aged man. But I was youthful in my appearance and youthful in my spirit. And Van and Dave and I were writing really good songs, and we sounded good singing together, and we got signed to the label, and that first record was a double platinum release. It was crazy. So you get, I mean, to have 3 different careers in and of itself is a very unique set of circumstances.
All right, and Black Hawk is very successful band.
I'm sorry?
Black Hawk is a very successful band with a lot of selling. I mean, you're very much famous with Black Hawk as well as with Outlaws.
Right, and both those bands are very active still today.
Yes, before we go back to Outlaws and the final reincarnation of the band, I would like to ask you, if you don't mind, a couple of things about the Southern rock scene.
Yes.
First of all, I understand that there is a strong bond between the bands, and many artists or bands wrote songs dedicated to the scene, mentioning other bands. Why is that? Unfortunately, this is an attitude that not very common in the rock scene.
No, the Southern rock community is there's a great deal of camaraderie in the bands that represented Southern rock in the early middle 70s. Now, the Outlaws were a little bit later than Charlie Daniels, obviously, and Marshall Tucker and Leonard Skinner. And it was something that the Allman Brothers started. And so,
right.
We were, I was extremely proud of the fact that I was a part of what that represented. I mean, we were all just having fun together on the road and representing the part of the United States where we came from. And we didn't have to go to New York or Los Angeles. We could stay in Florida or Tennessee or Georgia or South Carolina, and we could represent the South, or represent, better yet, the state of Florida or Tampa specifically. And it gave us a sort of a sense of pride, and it also gave us a sense of belonging to something bigger with bands like Marshall Tucker, Leonard Skinner, and Charlie Daniels.
Understood.
Those three bands.
Understood. Now, this leads me to the next question that I would like to ask you without putting you in a hard place. And if you don't want to reply, I will understand that. But I'd like you to ask you something
Right.
that troubles me too much. Unfortunately, something that I face out, also here in Greece, in Athens. Unfortunately, many people, without even getting down to listen to Southern rock music or even read their lyrics, consider the Southern rock bands in general as racist rednecks, maybe because of the racial problems in that area too many years ago, or because of the rebel flags that they see in album covers or in live shows. How do you respond to them?
Well, I vehemently reject the notion that our music represents racism. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Our music simply represents our own sort of small story. The Confederate flag has
Yes?
fallen from grace from the standpoint of what it represents. You have to remember something, and it's a very complex, many-layered sociological equation, but the Civil War, as it turns out, was really about one thing. It was about slavery.
I understand.
And when the South lost the war, there were a lot of people that tried to make the war about something different. And the Confederate flag, to us as young people, never meant racism. It just meant geographical connection. And when it became clear that the war wasn't about states' rights, that it was about slavery, and that people were offended by the Confederate flag, everyone, including Leonard Skinner, stopped using it and distanced themselves from it, because we're not in the business of hurting people. We're in the business of making music and putting a smile on their face. And so nowhere in our lyrics do we allude to the fact that there's a racial issue anywhere on the table. We just write about our friends, where we've been, what we've done, what it means, and that we're actually able to continue to still do it again.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we're at with it. And it doesn't really reflect anything racially on our part. And I suppose you can understand why people would assume that because a band is from the South and they have on occasions waved a Confederate flag, that they might be perceived as racist.
I understand.
And I certainly understand that, but nothing could be farther from the truth. And I speak for myself and everybody in our band, but I also speak for the other groups. I know these people. They're not racists. But, at least I hope they're not. I mean, we love everybody equally, and we want everyone to have the opportunity to have the best life they can. And so there's not a part of us that is orchestrated to try and hold someone else down.
I understand. Thank you very much for replying to this question, Henry. Now, the Volunteer Jam.
Yes, sir.
The Volunteer Jam is an annual music festival that was originally held by Charlie Daniel Band. You have also played to a Volunteer Jam. Why is this festival so important for the scene that all bands are eager to play there?
Well, it was an opportunity very early on for us to get together and to play a show together. And Charlie was older than most of us and sort of represented a father figure in the genre. And so when Charlie Daniels called on everyone to come and play with him, we all kind of jumped at the chance to do it because we loved and respected Charlie. And we loved one another and wanted to play together. And it was validation that we were part of something, again, something bigger and something important. And there was a great deal of affection for one another. So it was just an opportunity to go and do something with our friends.
All right. Now let's go back to Outlaws. After some sporadic reunions on stage and the death of Huey in 2007, Outlaws came back to life 1 year later, due to yours and Monte Yoho efforts, with a new lineup performing live for several years before releasing a new album. How did it feel to be back on the road with these guys, continuing the legend of Outlaws?
Well, first of all, I knew that if I formed a group called the Outlaws, that there was some risk involved in the fans accepting it. So I was aware of the risk involved because I know what the Outlaws' musical personality embodied, and I helped create that personality with my contribution to the band early on. But I knew if I put the right people in the band, most of the people in the band in 2005 were people that I brought into the group. Randy Threet, Chris Anderson, Dave Robbins, all these people were people that I knew and invited into the band. And Chris Anderson, my invitation to Chris to join the Outlaws goes back to 1986. So, when I suggested I was going to put the band back together with Chris Anderson and Randy Threet, and I was going to invite Billy Crane, who was a standout guitarist in the Henry Paul band, and I was going to play with Monty, I knew that the band would be good. I knew the band would be great. And I knew that the band would be faithful through my direction and insistence, that the band would be faithful to the Outlaws' musical personality. And so whatever risk there was, and there was a significant amount of risk, I was willing to take it because I knew that we would put a great show on. We would treat those songs respectfully. And we would also have people in the band that could write and record new music to move the brand into the future. So that was my goal from the beginning, was to not only play all the songs that Huey and Billy and I had written and play them faithfully to the band's original musical personality, but that we would write and record new music and push the band into the future and create our own legacy to go with that of the original group.
You told me just a few minutes ago about the problem. I mean, if everybody else would accept the name, and I would ask you. I would like to ask you about the lawsuit you faced in 2010 by Huey's wife for trademark violations. Do you want to comment this?
Right. I don't want to talk about that. I listen. Let me say this about all of that. This is all I'm going to say about that. My intentions from the beginning were to respect the brand and my fellow bandmates that started the group together with me. When that lawsuit hit the table, I defended myself vehemently and my coworkers because I had been there since the beginning and I knew what the Outlaws' musical personality consisted of.
Indeed.
And I knew I was going to be faithful to it. And any notion that I had to answer to someone else about how the band was going to conduct itself in the marketplace as a professional entity was not negotiable. And so when Huey's wife wanted to contend with me for control of the band, I did what I had to do.
Understood. Okay, let's go further. In 2012, you had released the acclaimed album It's About Pride, which was a magnificent comeback. What is this pride you are talking about, and what does it means for you? Was this a new start for the band?
Well, it goes back to what I said about pride in our own accomplishments, in our own efforts, and pride in being a part of something bigger than ourselves. Being respected members of the quote-unquote Southern rock community and being successful in our dream of becoming a popular recording artist with songs that reflected our lives, set us apart from other musicians in our accomplishment. And that, was the message in that song.
Okay. Was this a new start for the band or a new chapter in a long book of music history?
It's really more of a new chapter. I mean, part of my goal when I came back to the Outlaws and assumed a leadership role in the group was to, like I said, write and record new music so that we would have all the songs from the albums that I participated from in the early, middle 70s, and that we would write and record our own songs that reflected the people that were in the band with me today. And I'm talking about Billy Crane and Dale Oliver and Steve Grisham and all these people that go out there every night and play their heart out on that stage every night. These records reflect their part in the Outlaws' musical legacy. And so I felt like we should treat that legacy, that musical legacy, and the personality of the group with a great deal of respect and a great deal of attention placed on style so that we would not disturb or in any way try to change the musical personality of the band, the Outlaws. I wanted to always play strongly into the original musical personality, and both It's About Pride and Dixie Highway play very squarely into the band's musical personality. So that was the reason behind all that.
Great. What keeps you on the road all these years? What is motivating you?
Well, it's my job, number one. I mean, we work for money to make money to live on and to pay our bills. And we also work to try and improve upon our reputations as meaningful members of a band that has such a rich history like the Outlaws. Those are the two motivating factors for me, is taking care of that brand, making sure that it's healthy and treated respectfully, and also making sure that the guys that come out there and work with me have, the opportunity to enjoy the fans' enthusiastic reaction to their contribution, and to also make a living. Let's face it. I mean, this is the way we make a living. This is how we earn money to pay our bills.
Indeed, but if you
go ahead.
No, I did understand what you're saying, but in the same time, if you don't love very strong what you are doing, you will not be able to last on the road, and because it's very difficult, and you have to face a lot of difficulties. All the time on the road, on hotels, on the stage. It's very tiring, and
it is. And listen, and there's not a lot of money in this. It's not like we're getting rich. Number one. Number two, everybody does it for their own self-satisfaction, and they're looking for the same thing that you might be looking for as a journalist: respect from your peers. And the Outlaws go out every night and play very hard, and they distinguish themselves as a band every time they take the stage. And so all of the attention and all of the focus that comes with the original band, and the questions that come out of, are they as good, or are they entitled, or are they worthwhile, or are they valid? Those questions are answered every night on stage by the commitment that goes into our performance and the hard work that goes into writing and recording new music.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all the reasons why we do what we do.
And how long do you think that it will be?
I would not have gone back and formed a new version of a band called the Outlaws to just go out there and jack off and make a mess of it. I went out there to improve upon the band's musical personality and my part in that.
Mm-hmm. And how long do you think that you will be out there doing this thing? I mean, you give a piece of your heart and of your soul every time you go on stage or writing a song. You give us as a gift a part of your soul and your heart.
Right. Well, I think I've got another 5 years. I think I can do it till I'm 75.
75? Oh, that's good to know.
But that's my goal.
Excellent. I wish you will always make such good music as still today. Finally, what do you have to say to the Greek fans of Southern rock? I can assure you that there is a strong and big fan base here, and Outlaws are one of the most favorite bands of the scene in Greece.
Right. Well, we would love to come to Greece and play for you, and we're honored that you love our band.
Great. Thank you very much, Henry.
Well, you're a sweet guy, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And I hope to see you someday.
That will be a blessing. It will be a blessing to see you here in Greece.